All right, everybody. Welcome to Drew's Virtual Happy Hour. The happy hour is designed to help us escape the reality of the COVID pandemic, have a little bit of fun, maybe learn a little bit about some spirits, and have some really rad guests. And tonight's guest is absolutely one of those types of people. He is a former Griffin, a Sandals Resort alumni, and he is currently the export manager for Worthy Park. My guest tonight, Zan Kong. How are you, brother?
Like Griffin, you threw me for a curve there. I wasn't expecting that one.
That's my thing.
No, yeah. I'm good, dude. I mean, hanging in there. Like you said, just making the most of it.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, and just kicking. For those of you that don't know, I'm in Kingston, Jamaica right now, but usually on the road, which is how I usually run into Drew all over the place. But I've been quote unquote grounded for the past 3 months, 2.5 months. I don't even know how long it's been. I don't even know. It's
Yeah,
just one long day.
that's what it feels like, right? One of my suppliers talked to me today. He goes, "Oh man, I didn't even realize it was Wednesday. It feels like Tuesday." I was like, "I can't believe that you still have a concept and grasp of time at this point. Like I am completely lost every day. Every day just it's Groundhog Day, you know." So
It is, and I think I know we were kind of talking about it a little bit before, but I am doing, I do a couple of virtual happy hours, a lot of online trainings and whatnot, and that's really the only thing that keeps me on a track of a day to day. It's like, all right, tomorrow's Wednesday, okay, I have something on Wednesday. Tomorrow's Thursday, I got this on Thursday. So
yeah.
it's really I schedule these stuff as much for me to know what day it is and have as much as having fun with it.
Right. Well, that's good. I mean, and you do have some fun ones out there. I mean, the one that you're doing with Sly from Trailer Happiness is absolutely hysterical. Like when I tuned in, I was like, oh man, if people were here for rum talk, they did not come to the right thing. This is just, almost shit talking back and forth the whole time. It's really entertaining. I'm glad you guys are doing it again.
Well, not again. I know we're here on yours, but not to go into that one. But that was our whole kind of thing with it. It was like, listen, there's so much education stuff going on right now.
Yeah.
Like everybody, all the brands are doing education. Like even I'm doing a ton of education. So it's like we always kick it and have a lot of fun just shooting the shit with each other. So let's try something different.
No, I loved it, and feel free to plug whatever you want on here. There's no rules. It's not like I'll have sponsors that'll get mad at me or anything.
Yeah, well, we're doing it again on Sunday. I guess you saw the poster.
Yeah, and if you guys aren't familiar, definitely check that out because that poster is hilarious. I won't, give it away just yet, but maybe we'll talk about it later. So as I had mentioned, you are a Sandals Resort alumni, and that actually makes up quite a bit of your past. Is actually like the tourism and hospitality industry, and you went to school for that as well. You come out, you're working at all these great places, not only Sandals, but some really, really, really nice spots as well. And I'm just wondering, like, how does that happen? How do you go from, okay, here I am working in the hospitality business and working at all these really great places, and then all of a sudden it's like, and now I'm exporting rum.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I could come up with some, great story about how I was dedicating my life to rum, and it was always my secret passion, and it was my dream job. But truthfully, I just kind of fell into it. I mean, I was working in I'm a hotel hospitality brat. Like that's what I was doing for, like you said, about a good 10, 15 years after I finished school, and I was working at my previous job at the airport, and I ran into my now boss, Gordon, who's the CEO, and his family owns Worthy Park, and just literally, in true hospitality fashion, just shoot the shit. And we exchanged contact information, and about a month and a bit later, well, when we were talking, he's kind of talking about rum bar and trying to start doing export for Worthy Park, and I went home and I was telling my girlfriend, I was like, yeah, I met the owner of rum bar, and yeah, man, he was, kind of cool guy, interesting, like what he was talking about doing. And then, went about with our business. And like a month and a half later, he wrote me, and he was, we were talking via email. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to open up a position for export manager. Do you know anybody that's interested? And then I was like, hey, might as well. It would, allow. At the time, I was living in Kingston, working in Montego Bay, so I was driving back and forth. At the time, it was like a 4-hour drive, so I was doing that like once a week back and forth, and I, I I could be in Kingston, work from home, so to speak, and I've always loved drinking rum. And when I met with him, and he's like, you've never worked in rum, you never worked in spirits, but I told him, I was like, I worked in hospitality, and I was on the other side of the bar, and it's a booze business, it's relationship driven, and I'll learn as much as you want to teach me, and I think just basically just roll the dice and give me a shot.
Yeah.
And five years later, actually this month is 5 years, and it's been a fun ride.
Absolutely. I think when I was doing my research and stuff like that, and I saw your long list of hospitality jobs and, the fact that it was such a major emphasis for you in college as well, I was like, that makes total sense on why he's like one of the nicest guys, because he's just been conditioned to do this for so long and he's been educated on it for so long.
Yeah,
And I was just like, well, duh, of course he was in hospitality. And, and again, like working at these big name places. I mean, you were even at the Ritz-Carlton for a while too. I mean,
yeah.
and there's obviously, the standards there are next to none. So I'm curious, with that experience and that education, all that stuff, I mean, are there more of those skills that translate to your current role? I mean, I know you talk about the relationship part of it, but is there anything else that you still pull from those years that you spent in hospitality that you apply now?
Yeah, definitely. Like and when I was in hospitality, I was heavy food and beverage. So I did front office and whatnot, but food and beverage was, that was where I kind of cut my teeth, so to speak. And whether I did a lot of events, I did a lot of banquet stuff. So, rolling into now doing the sales side, and as you know, like a lot of what we do is activations and events, and planning through menu planning, event planning. So yeah, I definitely feel like I pull a lot on execution of events in terms of our events that we're putting on. Because I reach back into the old, well, okay, kind of thinking through what's the flow going to be like, what's execution going to be like, ultimately what's the guest experience going to be like. Because when we're doing, even if it's tastings or events or education stuff, it's all it's all about the guests, right? Whether it's bartenders or consumers off the street, it's all about having them create that emotional tie with not only you but the products and the brand. And whenever you leave and afterwards, when you see Worthy Park or you taste the rums, or you hear that song that we listened to during the presentation, like it should help you click back to that emotional tie with the brand.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I took advantage of Florida Atlantic University when they ran the certificate for the hospitality program,
Oh, nice,
and
yeah,
outside of the finance part of it, I really enjoyed
yeah,
it. And as I was going through it, I was like, I should have freaking done this. Like, this sounds way awesome and right up my alley, and it makes total sense that you could go from there to actually slinging booze and stuff.
yeah. I don't think I don't think it's the most conventional way, like but
Well, yeah, but so, I mean, I think that's been kind of like this theme as I've had multiple guests on. Like, everybody's origin story is so unique, and for sure there's no set path. And
yeah,
I find myself kind of falling more in love with those stories over the past couple months and listening to those
yeah,
things, because it's like, you're right, like so many people are doing educations and stuff like that, and it's great, it's so awesome,
yeah, yeah,
but I'm hearing the same thing over and over again. And I kind of want to hear something a little bit new. And we're going to talk Worthy Park, of course, and we're going to
yeah,
get into some
yeah.
of the nerdier stuff. But I just like hearing people's stories, and especially ones that, like you said, are a little unconventional. It's cool. And I think to me, I hope what it does is it shows people, it's like, hey, you can get to this point. You can continue to grow in this
Yeah.
industry, even if it's in a different route. Um, so with that
And
said, no, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, when we were talking before, I got really excited. We're like, yeah, it's not gonna. I don't remember exactly what you said, but it's basically, yeah, it's not gonna be your typical just like brand like education talk. And I was like, cool, man, that's even more fun for me because
Yeah.
it'll come out naturally and organically, right? But some
Well,
fun.
that's what I hope, and actually, that's like one of the reasons that I try to throw a little bit of a weird comment in. So at the very beginning, because I think it does kind of disarm you a little bit,
Yeah. Yeah.
like throwing out a Sandals Resort alumni, like it's kind of like, oh, okay, we're gonna hopefully we have fun with this, or a former
Yeah.
Griffin, I think
Yeah.
that's been kind of the go-to, is finding out people's like college mascots and calling them by that, because it's
Yeah.
something. How often do you think about that? Like never.
Never,
But
never, dude.
for 4 years you saw it everywhere, or at
Yeah.
least 4 years. So
Yeah.
when it comes to rum, what do you remember as being your earliest experience? I know I read one article that you wrote where it was actually more of like had more like medicinal purposes, like you soak rum on a rag and then you put it on your head, or
Yeah.
you put it in the corners of the duppies, to after you build a
Yeah.
new house.
Splash it in the corner of the house for the duppies. So
Yeah.
yeah, I grew up, in a Chinese Jamaican household, and white rum in Jamaica is just it's part of your growing up. It's part of your upbringing. It's part of the culture down here, and so much of it is not just for, like you said, it's not just for drinking. So you always just see a bottle of white rum in everybody's house. And to this day, like my mom doesn't drink a drop of rum, but she has a whole, rum bar, white rum section of her kitchen, because, if it's cooking, if it's, giving, it's one of those gifts too, that as a Jamaican, you're always just you have to have white rum available for people coming over. And, if you're a little sick or you're feeling a little flu coming on, you take pour 2 ounces, some honey and lime in a shot glass, and take that back, and cuddle up with your warm blanket, and you'll feel better by morning. Or your kids, if they're teething, dude, just put it on their gums, and
Yep.
I hope they feel better. They at least sleep at night. But and then, dude, and now it's like, hey, it's sanitizer strength as well, right? So
Yeah.
you could put some in a spray bottle, and it's your hand sanitizer.
Right.
So yeah. White rum is just, you just grow up with it in Jamaica. You're accustomed to seeing it, and I didn't even know you could drink white rum until I was like probably 14 years old, because it was just something that was like medicine for us. And we drank, in Jamaica we actually call it red rum. Which is referred to as just kind of aged, gold rum, is a lot of people refer to it as red rum. So we drink red rum, and the white rum, yes, you drank it, but a lot of it was, used for other means.
Yeah. And you also spent a portion of time growing up in Canada as well, right?
Yeah, so basically I was schooled in Canada. So I was born and went to school there, and always coming back to the island, but I didn't move back until I graduated university.
Okay.
So yeah, I grew up in just outside of Toronto. I played hockey, played lacrosse. Leafs fan, Blue Jays, die hard. Typical Torontonian.
Well, I thought that was like another really interesting thing I picked up. And again, like another, like, well, of course he's Canadian. He's so nice. Again, But so I started thinking about it. And I was like, okay, so obviously, like, you can, surface level, you're like, oh, well, he's Chinese Jamaican. Okay, we
Yeah,
got that. And then you throw in this next fold of, and he's also Canadian. And there's
yeah,
just like all these different layers. And this is more of just like life in general, but that's so many different cultures to kind of juggle. And I'm just curious, like, if you like, how do you do that? Do you do things that are like distinctly Canadian, and then other things distinctly Jamaican, other things distinctly Chinese? Like, I just, because there's a lot of different, push and pull there.
yeah. It's just really weird, man. I mean, I grew, growing up in Canada, like where I grew up, just outside of Toronto. It's hugely multicultural, and there's a lot of Chinese there, a lot of Jamaican, actually a lot of Chinese Jamaican, when they left Jamaica in the '70s, ended up in the Toronto area. So I never, it was weird because I never really felt like, I felt that there was a strong Chinese Jamaican culture in Toronto, but then by look, like I look Filipino. So I grew up like everybody thought I was Filipino. And it was, it's like, okay, no, I'm Chinese Jamaican. All right, cool. And then, it's like you're always kind of in this weird gray area, because it's like, I all of a sudden, I kind of use it to my advantage, kind of, mix and blend in wherever you wanted to, right? Like I
Yeah.
could be Canadian because, Canada is just multicultural as shit, and then could be Chinese Jamaican because we had a big family and big community, and I could have that Chinese side, which was very stick to my dim sum and all my very Chinese New Year cultures and whatnot. But yeah, to your question, which I completely probably forgot what you actually asked me, but yeah,
No, you're doing it. You're explaining it all, like kind of balancing it.
I do find myself, like, if you put me in a room of Canadians, all of a sudden I feel like I'm talking like a Canadian, very much. All of a sudden it's talking about hockey all the time, and kind of your oats get a little, you get that about, and it's true, man. All that shit's true. The A's come in, all those stereotypes, like they play themselves back out. And then obviously, like, when I'm traveling, my accent is very mixed up. So depending on kind of the situation I'm in. So I've been with, like, prime example, I was in San Antonio in January for cocktail conference, and I was in a taxi with some of our colleagues, and Barry, Jeff Beachrum Barry was with us, and we got into the Uber, and it was a Jamaican guy, and Jeff told me after, he's like, it was the craziest thing because I'm understanding everything you're saying to us, and then you get in the Uber with the Jamaican driver, and all of a sudden I couldn't understand a word you were saying. So it's it really does kind of come and go situationally. But thinking back on it, the funny part about that Uber driver is he was probably the only Jamaican Uber driver in San Antonio, and I got him twice, 2 days in a row. So go figure. I don't know how that happened.
You just have like tractor beams for each other.
Right? No, it's true, man. It's like Jamaicans always can always gravitate and always end up finding each other in wherever we are in the world. It's really cool.
Yeah, and so I didn't go through like island history or anything like that, and I know, Jamaica's got quite a bit of history, especially like colonization and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
where does like the Chinese culture come into Jamaica? Like, where was there a time period or anything like that
Yeah.
and if you don't know, you don't. I mean, but I just
No, I definitely do. Actually spend I do quite a few presentations on the history of Jamaica, which is cool because the development of the island kind of traces back to colonization, and it kind of ties in a lot with sugar and rum, which kind of links everything together. But specifically speaking to the Chinese, after emancipation in 1834, when it was announced 1834, officially 1838, slavery was completely abolished, but they needed indentured laborers, so there was a need for people to work on the plantations. The first waves that came over were actually Indian, East Indian indentured laborers. And after that, the second wave of indentured laborers that came were actually the Chinese. So my Chinese side roots back to southern China, the Hakka people. And they're a very nomadic people. There was still a lot of civil war in China at the time. So as a people, they moved around a lot. And there was an opportunity to come to Jamaica. So there was initially 4 waves of Chinese, I guess you could say 4 ships of Chinese that came over. Some came direct, some came by way of their first stops were some of the other islands or Panama. A lot of Chinese went to Panama as well to work on the canal. But my Chinese side, as far as I know, the earliest was about 1908. That I know one of my great grandparents arrived. I know I actually just found my on my grandmother's side, who is my grandmother was a mix of Chinese and black, and her father, we just found his birth certificate, or my uncle had his birth certificate from 1891. Not his birth certificate, his marriage certificate from 1891,
wow.
which was kind of cool. So I'm now, I kind of nerd out on some of that history stuff. So now I'm like, man, I got to go to like the archives and see if I can, trace back this other side of the family tree, which I don't really know a lot about. So yeah, it's a cool history. And now modern days, there's the Chinese Jamaicans, and we have almost our own kind of unique culture of the Chinese Jamaican culture. And then you have, the new Chinese, or the freshly Chinese, that are coming in now direct from China, who, with obviously a lot of investments are coming into the island in recent years. But you know, there's almost like there's a lot of Chinese in Jamaica, but there's kind of two distinct sets, right? You have the old time Chinese Jamaicans that have been here for, you know, decades and have integrated into Jamaica, and then you have a lot of the new Chinese who are coming over and, you know, don't speak a lot of English, and, you know, don't we call them the freshly Chinese, you know, the mainland Chinese that are coming over. So
Freshly Chinese.
which to them, I'm not Chinese enough, right? Because I don't speak Chinese, and, yeah, I'm darker skinned. So it's really interesting, you know, culturally.
Yeah, well, I mean, and I think that's one of like the good and bad things about rum, right? Is that
Yeah,
it has done so much culture mixing because of, you know, the labor that goes into it, where
yeah,
it's being made, and everything like that. And so when I, you know, really started digging into it, I was like, oh, I definitely have to ask about that, because I just think that's really really interesting. And um, you know, I know that Jamaica is still working their way back from, you know, achieving independence and trying to become, you know, kind of like a truly sovereign nation that doesn't have all these debts and stuff like that.
yeah,
So there's a lot of work, but I think what that does do, and you see it across, you know, anybody who's from Jamaica, is like an extreme pride in the country, and, you know, people
yeah,
really rep Jamaica hard if they're able
yeah,
to, you know.
yeah. We do,
So
we do.
it's kind of it's cool. All right, so we're gonna get into the rum talk, you know, finally, for all the people who are mad at me. So just so everybody knows, if you have any questions, you know, type them into the chat. We can do that as well, but we'll also have a time at the end for you guys to ask questions too.
Yeah.
But the rest of these will be pretty rum focused, I think, if I remember correctly. But so Worthy Park, it's around for a long time. It's actually the oldest distillery, or oldest estate
Yeah.
in Jamaica.
Yeah.
Now, the distillery was shut down for quite a while. So after World War II, there's this big rum, you know, increase. There's too much of it, so Worthy Park decides to shut down. And then in 2005, it opens back up, but with a brand new facility and everything like that. And so when they first started, they were selling a lot of bulk rum, and
Yeah.
I would want to ask you, like, so what's the thought process behind doing that bulk rum, and then where, you know, and then what was it like trying to get to?
So, I mean, you got to figure. So we're, again, you know, you kind of alluded to it. We're the oldest out of all the estates in operation right now. We're the oldest. So we were founded in 1670. So we're 350 years now, right? So our first record of rum production was 1741. You know, which is quite a while. So, but you got to figure all those years between 1741 up until 1962, you know, we were a British colony. And like most, aside from a few brands that started in Jamaica, you know, most of the sugar producers, if not all of the sugar producers that made rum, were made it as a commodity. So we are producing bulk commodity sugar, we were producing bulk commodity rum. So it was just the way that we operated, you know, on island. Obviously, you talk about Ray and Nephew, which was a brand since, you know, the 1800s. So they were one of the first. You know, you have Myers, Kruba, which date back quite a while. Appleton as a brand, you know, was the first estate to have their brand really make it on the world stage. But we were all the other ones were just producing rum as a bulk commodity. So we would make it and we would sell it to traders, sell it to blenders and brokers worldwide, and they would add the value onto it. So again, like you said, you get to 1962 now, and which actually coincided with our independence, but there was, you know, a ton of Jamaican rum being produced, and the oversupply was just causing a drop in prices, and there wasn't as much demand. So the Spirits Pool Association, which all of the distilleries are a part of, you know, the recommendation from the consultants there was that, you know, there's just too much rum being made, so they needed producers to stop. And there was 9 of us that came out of it at the time. So there was more people that stopped distilling in 1962 than there are current distilleries now in Jamaica.
Wow.
So us and 8 others. Again, we had no brand. We had a still fermentation, everything at the sugar factory. So for us, it was just a matter of, instead of using that molasses for ourselves, just selling it through Caribbean Molasses, which is the marketing association, sorry, the association that deals with the buying and selling of molasses. So it, we took the incentive, the financial incentive, and just stopped making rum. But it wasn't that big of a deal because we weren't, we had no brand, we had no brand equity. We weren't really giving anything up, so to speak. Now, when you get to 2005 or 2004, when Gordon proposed to his family that we could get back into rum, that there was an opportunity to go back into it, that we started again making rum, and with the intention that we would have brands on the market. So and that we started making rum in 2005. We still didn't have a brand, so we were making rum. We were selling a little bit in bulk, and it wasn't until 2007 where we actually launched Rum Bar White Overproof, which was our first brand and the first time Worley Park had a branded rum. And we're still selling bulk. Like most distilleries worldwide, it's still a huge benefit for us to sell rum in bulk. But now we're also trying to create and push our own brands out on the world market, because ultimately that's where most of the value is, right, in creating those brands.
Right. And I know throughout that extremely long history, there's only been essentially 3 families at the head of the Worthy Park estate. When they decided to stop making rum back in the 60s, you said they sold off the bit of their molasses. Did they just transition to sugar production? Or, I mean, how do you keep the lights on? Just like, you're like, okay, yeah, we don't need this anymore. Like, what were they doing?
Yeah, well, I mean, sugar has always been the primary moneymaker for us. So it was, we started sugar in 1720 commercially. So we've done sugar for 300 years straight.
Okay.
And even in modern day, we're actually the most basically the only profitable sugar producer in Jamaica. And we've been lucky that we've had a successful sugar business. So it wasn't the lights were kept on just from sugar production alone.
Yeah.
So molasses was almost a say byproduct for it, because it kind of is a byproduct of sugar. But
right.
How do you're going to get that out of sugar production? So you make rum with
it. And what is it like working for somebody like Gordon? I mean, again, like you're talking about this family who's been there for a long time, and and having Jamaican-owned brand, which I know is very important in Jamaica as well. What is that dynamic like between you guys?
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, to like I kind of alluded to when I said Gordon hired me, he did take a chance. I never worked in spirits. I never worked in export business at all. But I do say we have a very good relationship, both personally and professionally. He's taught me basically everything I know, and he's been pretty much an open book in terms of giving the knowledge, sharing with me basically everything, everything about the sugar, not only rum, but the sugar side, sugar production, sugar farming as well. So we have a very good relationship. There's no one else in export, so it's really just myself. So I do feel a very not I don't want to say a lot of pressure, but definitely a lot of responsibility. Being that I'm kind of taking the brand globally, and it's a company that not only has his family owned it for 102 years, but we're about to celebrate our 350th anniversary. So, to be kind of responsible for really pushing Worthy Park and the runs that we're doing worldwide, I think it's a huge responsibility I have to, and there's tremendous amount of trust that he has in me, which is I'm very appreciative of.
Yeah, and I think that's the one thing that for me ended up being so surprising about you is like, because on the surface level, you kind of be like, oh yeah, he's the brand ambassador, for Worthy Park, and not to knock brand ambassadors, but they're great jobs, but they don't necessarily come with a whole lot of responsibility. Like you are responsible for getting into new markets and expanding the footprint of Worthy Park. That's a huge responsibility, and that's totally crazy.
And again, like it's one of those things too. Had I come from the spirits industry and was told what I'd be getting into on my own, I'd probably be like, no, hell no, that's way too much, But but in hindsight, I have worked for a lot of I've worked for the corporate Ritz-Carltons and hotels, but I've also worked for a lot of family businesses as well. So I think I'm kind of used to that dynamic of and I like doing stuff that is, not my responsibility, because I
Right.
feel like that's where I learn and I grow more. If I just stuck to one aspect of the job, I wouldn't know nearly as much as I do now, right? So being able to, do ambassador work, do sales, do marketing, work with distributors, work with importers, work on the product development side. If I worked for a big corporate company, I would never have those opportunities.
Yeah.
So,
Well, the
there's,
the airport job you had before, that was a startup, right? Or
yeah, that was a crazy place too.
so
So,
so I mean, you can almost take like that model and just kind of be like, because Worthy Park essentially becomes another startup for you, but it just happens to have a 300-year-old history that
yeah,
people don't
yeah,
know about.
exactly. But you're absolutely right, man. And, we get, and I'm sure, like when people hear you're from a rum brand or a liquor brand, like they assume that, it's just, oh, you've got, these $1 million expense accounts and your A&P budget. I'm like, dude, no, like, yes, thankfully social media has allowed small brands like us to look like we're, big brands.
Right.
And, it's kind of like, but when you get down to it, it's like, no, we're still a small brand, man. We're still, we have a long history and in terms of the estate, but from the rum side, like we're new, like we're young on the block. We're new kids on the block, so to speak.
You're right. Right. It's kind of cool to have that because there is so much of that entrepreneurial mindset that you need to have
Yeah,
when it comes to those things. And ultimately, like whether it's a rum congress stuff like that, like your table is the same size as the table next to you, and you have
yeah.
that ability to make that impression. As long as you put your table in the right place, which we learned in Miami that you did
I
not
was waiting for that to come up. I was waiting for that to come up.
you did not
Uh,
start in the right place. That guy was not happy with you.
oh
Um,
yeah, he was not happy. I don't even remember like why. I was originally at that table, and then I was switching to the other side, and I was like, yeah, you know what? I like looking at people coming in, so let me go back to that table.
yeah.
And then that guy had I won't say what brand he's from. No, he was a very nice guy, just trying to do his job. But like you were beside me, I think when he came back in, and I was like, oh yeah, this is the table, and he was like, it was like he was trying to fight me, right?
It was a little aggressive, just so people know, like the guy was like, "This is my table," and
Yeah,
it was just, it was tense to say the
yeah. And
least.
I looked to Drew to support me. Drew's a big guy, he like works out and stuff. And he was like laughing his ass off. I'm like, thanks for the backup there, Drew. Appreciate it.
I
Appreciate it.
would have
Thought I had somebody. I thought I had somebody in my corner there.
I would have stepped in had it gotten physical. I could have like laid on him or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I would have.
No. It was. I think it took us both by surprise. Like we were just totally
100%.
not expecting that, and we're like, okay, okay,
Well, I do think the reaction at first, and again, I think this is an extension of because you're such a nice guy that I thought he was messing with you at first.
yeah,
Like I
yeah,
didn't think he was serious, and then when it turns out that he was serious, I was like, "Oh God, okay."
yeah,
So
yeah.
maybe that explains a little bit of my delay in laughter at first.
All good,
Uh,
man. All good. All good.
but okay, so back to Rum. With Worthy Park, you guys have 4 sites of production essentially. The main site, the Worthy Park site, that's where the distillery is at. That's where the bottling happens. Everything like that. But then you have 3 cane fields that you're pulling all the sugar cane from, or at least that's what I read. So if I'm wrong, correct me.
Well, yeah. I just slight correction. So we have at Worthy Park, we're 10,000 acres of land. So we have 4,000 acres of total sugarcane. And
Wow.
then we're trying to, the sugar business is economies of scale. So we're always trying to get as much sugarcane and crush as possible. So we've leased 3 plots of land where we also, all we grow there is cane. And then we're also, I believe we're looking at leasing out more land as well, as it comes up. So most of our sugarcane does come from the actual estate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then with those 3 other plots of land, is there any type of like different terroir that plays into the cane that you guys are using, or is it all because it is an island? I mean, is it all pretty similar in terms of the
No,
characteristics that it gives off?
it's very, very different because even at the estate, our plots, even though they're close proximity to each other, whether it's the amount of rain that they get, the amount of sun that they get, the chemical composition, they're all different. So what our farm team is really good at, and our farm manager is phenomenal, they select the type of cane that we're using for each plot of land. So it's not that we just plant one type of cane because we like that cane. We're basically selecting the cane that's going to do best within the specific soil conditions. So we match it to not only like I said, the rain, the chemical composition, the sun, but also does it do better being cut by hand or cut by machine? Like all these little things that we take into consideration. So there's a lot that goes behind it. So I think overall, we have this overall microclimate, this terroir of Worthy Park, but if you break it down, like all to the sugarcane fields themselves have different characteristics as well.
And has that been a relatively new development in terms of like recording that kind of stuff? I mean, again, if you're talking about starting REM up again, I mean, I guess now it's 15 years ago, but were those things that they were taking notes of before, or with the production of REM, are they becoming a little bit more cognizant of it?
No, totally. I mean, our the beautiful thing about Worthy Park is we are one company, but our sugar farm, their focus is on growing the best quality cane that they can. Our sugar factory is their focus is crushing as much cane and producing the best quality sugar that we can. And then our distillery is concerned with obviously making the most consistent and best rum that we can. So everybody is very focused on kind of what their roles are, but knowing that if we have great cane, it's going to make great sugar and molasses, and if we have great sugar and great molasses, it's going to help us to make great rum. So they're all tied in together, but kind of operate very separately as well. But being that we were always focused on sugar, even when we were producing rum, the focus was always how do we grow the most cane, how do we crush the most cane that we can every year. So truthfully, the rum side hasn't really impacted how we make sugar, but the rum side has adapted our production to make best use of the molasses that we're producing. If that makes sense, or if that completely sounds kind of crazy.
No, I think it totally does. And I mean, I feel like we're at this point too where people are becoming more and more concerned about where their stuff is coming from, right? So you're going to take notes of that. You're going to be like, hey, we've noticed that this product ends up being this a little bit more. So I don't think that you can get too nerdy on stuff. I mean, I guess you kind of have to know your audience, but I mean, if you're tuned into the Zoom tonight, like, I think that's okay to jump into that kind of stuff. And actually the next question is very, very nerdy. So you guys use a couple different types of yeast strains, but without question, like, the coolest one is your wild yeast that you guys actually develop yourselves. And so can you just walk people through just the bizarre set of circumstances that you put all this stuff through to make this wild yeast that you guys then have?
Yeah, so I guess it's probably good to talk a little bit about muck pits, because that is, so for everybody out there who has heard of Jamaican rum or has ever talked about Jamaican rum, we talk a lot about dunder and its use in muck pits. So for us at Worthy Park, or for us in Jamaica, I should say, dunder is a leftover after you distill. So, after we run our distillation, the leftover waste we refer to it as dunder in Jamaica. Some people call it vinasse or stillage. So historically out in Trelawney, which is the western part of Jamaica, where they're very known for making, very, very, very high ester rum. Esters being, the chemical compounds that give you the aromas and the flavors of rum. Jamaica is known for being, producing rum with super high esters. Now in Trelawney, they would take it even further, and they would get, for frame of reference, our high ester rum is about 800-900 parts per million. Out in Trelawney, west, they're going, 1,600, 2,000 plus parts per million. So it's almost used as an essence more than anything else because it is that high ester. But what they do to get that is they take the dunder and underneath the fermentation house, they have what they call muck pits, and in these muck pits is basically just it's been there for over a century. Like it's just this pit that they have, and they just keep adding dunder into it. But it's a combination of dunder, molasses, like cane vinegar, like acidic acid, and it is basically just this soup of carboxylic acid, which is just marinating, I guess you would say, or cooking underneath there. So when they're ready to do fermentation, they basically scoop out some of this muck and they add it to the fermentation, and it's basically like spiking the fermentation. So if like you're making a rum punch and you spike it with some overproof to really kick it up a notch, that's what they're doing with the muck from the muck pits through fermentation. So all that to say, all that is how traditionally out west they make very, very high ester rum. So when we were building the distillery, all that just to say we don't do that. But at Worthy Park, when we built the distillery, we said, okay, should we try to replicate what they're doing out there or do something similar? And I was like, well, that's their thing. That's their baby. That's what they're known for. We'll do a high ester rum, but it will be a Worthy Park, high ester. So we're not shooting for 1,600 parts per million, but let's see what we can do. So to get the yeast for our high ester rum, we have what we call yeast propagation tanks or pre-fermentation tanks. And we have 4 of them. They're made from American white oak, and they're about 20,000 liters each. So inside of them, we'll add molasses, cane juice, and cane stalks. So basically cane waste. And we'll let that sit for 90 days. And the yeast and the bacteria and they're open air. So, when you talk about terroir, like everything that's in the air is a part of this. And we let that sit for 90 days. And we use that yeast that develops in our fermentation. So now you take that yeast and, you add it with molasses in a fermentation tank. And for the high ester rum, we don't do a temperature control. So it's completely natural, wild. And it's about a 2 to 3 week fermentation time. So it's for us to get our high ester rum, it's a very long process to get there, and it's very cool. It's very interesting the way we do it too.
Yeah, because it's kind of like this. It's like a nod to tradition, but then it's also putting your guys' own spin on it, which is rad. I mean, Dunder definitely has kind of like an infamous reputation in terms of what's actually in it. Wild animals, food, like you said, and stuff like that. Has there ever been a moment where someone has asked you a very specific, like, do you guys put this in your?
Oh yeah, and it's usually goats or bats are the 2 that are most common. It's like, oh yeah, do you have dunder pits or muck pits, and do you put goats in them or animal carcasses? And we're like, first of all, no, we don't have muck pits. And then second of all, I've never heard of anybody in Jamaica actually doing that.
Yeah.
Someone once told me that, it was, everyone likes to blame the French, right? So if someone said to me once, oh, it was the French rum producers that were trying to, trash talk the Jamaican ways, and we're trying to make up all these stories about goats and animal carcasses. But yeah, I don't know. But there is that whole mystery romanticism to it. But as far as I know, the muck pits in Jamaica don't use animal carcasses. But again, I can only speak for Worthy Park.
Yeah, those are called proprietary secrets. So
exactly.
You gotta watch out for those. Yeah. So you guys are producing. You launch Rum Bar. You come on. What was it? 2015.
15. Yeah.
Yeah. So you come in 2015. And now you have like your series of rums that you have, like your 12-year, which is amazing. And there's also all kinds of fun stuff. I have one. This isn't from you guys, but it is your stuff. Actually, can't see because my background. Hold on. I have a Valier from you guys. So,
oh yeah, nice.
Yeah, this is actually one of the first distillations that you guys would have done because it's from 2005. So
okay, I couldn't see it, but I saw the bottle. But
yeah, so distilled 2005, bottled 2015. So kind of like the perfect tie-in for you. This was a great choice tonight. But it's like, what do you guys have coming up that you're really excited about? I know you had mentioned an anniversary. Do you guys have any special bottlings planned for that?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely COVID has, has reared its head and has, kind of put a little bit of a kink in production. Mostly because we're really not too sure what's going on overseas. But, some of the cool stuff that we're doing. A couple years ago, we brought in some port casks and Madeira casks. So we started doing some secondary aging. We put in some fresh rum, some old rum into it. So we have those casks. We also brought in some Calvados and cognac casks as well. So we're doing, a lot of different secondary aging at the estate. I can knock wood, but I'm hopefully we can get at least one of each of those releases here. I think one of the coolest ones that I'm looking forward to, and a lot of people are looking forward to, is we're messing around with a dark overproof. So
nice.
kind of gunpowder proof rum. We're really trying to fill that niche when bartenders are calling for that all these old tiki recipes, especially that are calling for that dark Jamaican rum, but they're referring to that dark heavy pot still rum.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing like that out there on the market right now. So yeah, we should have that coming out this year as well. So those are kind of the top ones that are in the pipeline right now.
Nice. And I was actually asked this question recently, and I had a whole bunch of answers to it, and I feel like I was kind of all over the place with it. So I'm going to ask you it. But what do you consider is the classic Jamaican rum taste profile?
Oh, classic, man. It's really so. I think it's a tough category to describe a typical profile. And the reason I say this is because a lot of those old time historic rums are not made anymore. So when you're talking about, if you're looking at, the 1930s, down the beach cove, Trader Vic, like the recipes they were working with, all those specifically Jamaican rums that were at the time are not available anymore. So it's very hard point of reference for a lot of people to, we know what the rums were, but not a lot of people alive now have tasted them. So it's very hard to get that actual taste profile. And I think if you're looking at modern day Jamaican rum, like from, mid 1900s to current day, you're obviously looking at Appleton and Ray and Nephew as what people most know as Jamaican rum, because they are obviously the biggest brands coming out of the island. But what's interesting about them is that they're blends of pot and column. So, they're not the old time stuff that they were doing. When you talk about like Ray and Nephew, 15, 17-year-old, the 1 dagger, 2 dagger rums that they had, those were all, pot still only. But then you have kind of the modern day Jamaican rums, which are, the blend of pot and column that you're used to. And then in the more recent times when, now with Worthy Park pushing out, you have Hamden Estate coming out with their rums now. You have some long pond releases finding the market. There's a lot more interest in Jamaican rums, and the rums that I find right now, the rums that I find most people are gravitating towards when they're thinking about Jamaican rums are the 100% pot still, because they're rums that historically, when you talk about the old time Jamaican rum, like that's how we were producing.
Yeah.
But then now when you dive into pot still rums, a pot still rum that you get from Worthy Park is different than a pot still rum you get from Hamden and from Long Pond and from New Yarmouth, which I think released there's some independent bottlers that came out. So I think the overarching, if you're to have one kind of descriptor of Jamaican rum, it's like it's funk, and what does that even mean? Like it's like that's a funky Jamaican rum, and it's like, oh shit, but what does that even like really describe? And I guess it's just that fruity, a lot of banana, a lot of pineapple, just that real kind of fruity explosion that you're getting with a lot of the pot still rums that are out there now.
Yeah.
So again, it was one of those long ass answers to a question, which I don't even think I answered the question.
Oh, you kind of did, but you also answered it kind of the same way I did. I was like, at first you just kind of, it's funk, man. I don't know. It's kind of like moldy, but in a good way. I don't know. Like it's hard to.
No, it's like people are like, yeah, man, this is like, yeah, your rum has this like olivey bryness to it. I'm like, They're like, no, it's good. I'm like, yeah, okay, good. I just wanted to clarify because you described it as something that typically would not be too appetizing, but from a rum side,
Well, that's like the funniest thing about tasting notes, right? Is they're so personal, and like an olive brine, like I like that taste. So
yeah,
I'm like, ooh, I want to try that. But yeah, you have the opposite reaction. You're like, oh no, you hate my rum. That
yeah,
sucks.
yeah. I'm not, and like yes, we do talk about tasting notes a lot, but I don't personally like to tell people tasting because it's so subjective, right? Like
Totally.
if you pick up that 2005, and I'm like, yeah, Drew, it's like you're gonna get these notes of overripe banana, and then on the back end you're gonna get this like gingery, peppery olive brine, and you're gonna drink it like, yeah, I get that. But
Yeah.
if I give you a blank slate, like you're gonna come up with something which, yeah, you're describing the rum for you, but it's maybe completely different than what someone else gets on it.
Yeah, it just really depends on what your vocabulary is, right? And what your
Yeah,
exposure to different things. And I mean, that's, why I always encourage people. It's like, if you've never had it before, definitely try it because it's only going to
yeah,
make you better at trying things. So, if you get into kind of like the rum aficionados and a lot of conversations that they have, like the two rum types that they're always talking about are Barbados rum
yeah,
and Jamaican rum. A lot of that has to do with like the GIs that are in place and the protections that are surrounding
yeah.
it. But for you, if you're not drinking Jamaican rum and you can't say Barbados rum, what region are you do you really dig and what do you like to drink?
Yeah, I've been getting actually a lot more into the agricoles recently.
Nice.
And yeah, I mean, you see, when I'm in the States or even in Europe too, I spent a lot of time with a lot of the agricole guys.
Yeah.
Just for whatever reason, the Spearman team in the States, I spent an ungodly amount of time with them on the road.
Because they're so much fun. That's why.
Yeah, yeah, and I kind of just like attach myself to them, like, what you guys going for doing tonight? Can I come on? Yeah, so Ben hasn't been able to shake me, and Kiwa hasn't been able to shake me yet. But I've been getting into a lot of alcohol. And again, at first it was one of those things when you talk about your palate developing. The first time I had alcohol, I was like, okay, this is really like this is too much for me. Like I wasn't
Yeah.
really didn't really like it at first, and then as I tried it more and got to experience more, I'm like, yeah, this is pretty dope. So when I'm not, if you don't find me drinking Jamaican rum and you don't find me drinking Barbados rum, it's probably an agricole I'm gonna go for. And a
Yeah.
lot of the reason is too, like their standards and production standards, that they have there with the AOC. You know what you're getting.
Right. Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. It's actually one that I feel doesn't get enough credit for that.
Yeah.
And when people are always like, oh, these are the best rum, it's like, oh, I can't believe you're not talking about like the Spirit Bomb portfolio. I mean, I always joke with my boss. I'm like, that is the one company that if they came to me, I'd be like, see you later. I'm going with you because I just love their portfolio.
Yeah, but I think it also is one that is such like you have to be used to that complexity and those
But
different
it's an
flavors.
acquired taste. You have to earn it
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah,
But I think that's
yeah.
maybe why I like it so much more. It's just kind of like it's like, oh yeah, you had to get to this point.
Well, yeah,
Okay.
you're talking about having an esoteric portfolio, like you're used to that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. If it's not weird, I'm not interested. So that's really kind of how I fall in. All right, so now I'm gonna hit you with some more like rapid fire questions, and then we
All
can
right.
open it
I
up
love
to
these. I love
everybody
these.
else.
Yeah.
Okay, you have a pretty healthy amount of pineapple tattoos pinned on your Pinterest. Do you have any yourself?
This
Yes.
is why. This is why. And dude, that is semi creepy that you looked at my Pinterest.
Dude, I went page 9 on Google, bro. Don't even worry about what I'm into. I know the home
No.
projects you've been working on. I know all the things that you're
Oh,
into.
dude, if you have any advice on those home projects, let me know. But yeah, this is my pineapple tattoo that I got.
That's a nice combination of a lot of the tattoos I saw in there. So good job.
Yeah, exactly. That is exactly what it was. It was literally a mashup of a couple different styles that I liked. But again, that's the hospitality side of pineapple, the symbol of hospitality. It's
100%.
also relevant hugely in rum, so
Yeah.
just kind of fit. It fit.
Yeah. What is your go-to rum cocktail?
I'm drinking the rum and ting right now.
Okay.
So if I'm at a bar, it's definitely daiquiris. But I'll show you our lines. Just I know you're trying to rapid fire, but My girlfriend got excited. She was at a couple fruit stands yesterday and bought limes because I love daiquiris. Like daiquiris are our favorite drink to make, but this is our limes in Jamaica. Like these are how big they are. Can you see
Oh my
that?
gosh. Yeah.
It's like the size of a little bigger than a quarter, and it literally took me like 6 of these just to make a daiquiri for this afternoon. And I was like, I can't even drink a daiquiri right now because I don't want to go through squeezing the other 6 of the dozen limes I bought just to make another drink.
Yeah.
So
Drink.
I'm drinking rum and ting. Ting is a grapefruit soda, and and it's very typical, probably one of the most common Jamaican rum drinks that we have.
So just white rum and grapefruit soda.
Yep, yeah, overproof rum and grapefruit soda.
Okay, so that's kind of Paloma-esque,
Yeah,
but with rum. Okay, that's definitely my jam. I'm gonna make
try it, man.
that. Okay, so I give you the power of Thanos. You're able to snap your fingers and change one thing about the rum industry. What are you doing?
Oh, all the bullshit marketing stories out there, man. Gone, gone. I won't go into which ones, but you know which ones I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking
Yeah.
about. Okay, and then my last question will open up for everybody else. Eventually, when your memoir comes out, what's the title of it?
And I'm gonna take this from a kind of a message, like when we talk about how to raise our kids. It's just like do dope shit and don't be a dick. That's just like my life's motto.
Okay,
Yeah.
that is a great title.
Yeah.
I think you're gonna sell plenty of copies of that.
Appreciate it, Joey.
All right. So does anybody else who's still hanging on to our very intimate conversation have any questions for Zan while we have him? Let's see, I do. Okay. All right. So Catherine, she's new to rum, spirits in general. How to start tasting?
I think. Well, I'm gonna take it from the angle of like she's asking which. I mean, she's here. Like, are you talking about like which rums to start tasting, or how to actually start drinking rum? And what? Yes. Okay. So I would say it's very like the problem that we have in rum right now is that when you look at a category like whiskey, you look at a category, you walk into a liquor store and you'll see Scotch whiskey, Irish whiskey, bourbon, Tennessee, Japanese. You'll see everything kind of subcategorized, right? But then you go to a rum section and you just see rum, and you're seeing rums from Jamaica, from Trinidad, from Barbados, rums without origin, rums that are blended from different countries. So it's very hard to kind of understand, where to even start. And I think my recommendation for people who are new to rum is to go island by island, because I feel like each island, while all the producers are producing very different, you're going to get a good idea of like a style that each island produces, and you'll kind of have an idea of what style you're kind of into, right? So you look at your Barbados rum is very different than your Jamaican rums, on overarchingly, which are different from Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic, and different than Guyana and other Central American countries. And I think the beauty of getting into spirits now is that you can find so much information at the click of a Google search or Instagram search. So there's so much information there, and I don't mean like and try to stay away from the brand marketing stuff, because there's so many great independent reviewers and bloggers and writers out there that can give you kind of a little unfiltered information, as opposed to like the brand stories, because you want to know like what the differences are, and understanding the laws of production for each country are very different as well, right? So in Jamaica, an unaged rum, a white rum in Jamaica, like our overproof rum, can be completely unaged. But if you go to Puerto Rico, their rum has to be called a rum. It has to be aged. So, a white rum and a white rum from two different countries are not necessarily going to be on the same spectrum. So, yeah, I probably didn't even answer your question. Again, I'm good at not answering questions. I should have been in politics, but yeah, I would say start country by country, because it's just a kind of an easier way to mentally and logically think about rum.
I think that's good. That's it. I think doing
Thanks,
countries
Catherine.
is
Appreciate it.
is
Yeah.
is the right way, because I mean
Yeah.
it can be overwhelming. So keep that in check. Greg wants to know if you guys are dependent on rain or do you have irrigation for your cane fields?
Completely 100% dependent on rain. We actually have no irrigation. So everything is completely based on rainfall. Now we're 1,200 feet above sea level, and we typically get more rain than a lot of the low-lying areas on the island. So it's usually not an issue. But we do have periods of drought. When I was up talking to my farm manager last weekend, uh, we had gone, or sorry, no, it was Monday. God, everything is just one long week. But on Monday, he told me within the last 50 days, there has only been one day of measurable rain. So one day where we had enough rain that you could actually say, hey, we got like half an inch rain. So otherwise, it was just like intermittent, just like a quick sprinkle or over the field. So yeah, we are 100% dependent on rainfall. But to that, now that we're in crop season, which is we cut 6 months of the year. Um, not having rain is great for the cane cutting because you're not rained out from cutting and it's not the fields aren't soaking in mud. But from the actual cane growing side, yeah, you obviously you need water. You need water for your cane. So it's good and it's bad when we're having some periods of no
It actually reminds me, are there any rules when it comes to the cutting of the cane? Because I know like with like the Martinique GI, you have to crush it, I think within 24 hours of it being cut, and they can get pretty strict about that. Is there anything like that in Jamaica when it comes to cutting the cane?
Not from the GI, not from the rum production side of it. And again, because most of us use molasses and because most of the producers on island are using imported molasses,
Oh,
except for
okay.
Worthy Park. Yeah, we're the only one that uses 100% Jamaican, 100% our own molasses. But there is a guideline of a 48-hour, what we call kill to mill. So 48 hours between when you cut cane to when you actually start crushing it. But at Worthy Park, we actually operate on a 24-hour kill to mill. So within 24 hours of cane getting cut, it's got to start crushing in the sugar factory.
Okay. And then Catherine wants to know, can we find your rums in Sacramento? I
We are.
I'm
What's
trying to
that?
think of where I've seen your stuff at, and if it's been in Sacramento. I mean, I know we can get it for sure. Like
Oh
that's
yeah,
not a.
definitely. I mean, K&L has it. I know our overproof is on Drizzly. I know Drizzly's become kind of popular. So they have it, and there's a lot of shops I know in LA area. But let me, Catherine, if you hit me up on Instagram or Facebook or something, I'll talk to my team out in Sacramento and find out where it's available.
Well, and I know that we actually had a question got asked about one of the Worthy Park rums in our Sacramento Ohana page, and one of our local stores who is more bottle shop focused is going to be bringing it in, because that's like one
Oh,
thing that
nice.
Sacramento's been lacking for a while. I mean, the one that, and I'm gonna show it again, but without my background because that's what ruins it.
Yeah.
Hold on a second.
And Catherine, one of the things that really, for us as small producers really helps us out is, we're available. So if you do have a bottle shop that you go to, we're sold in California through Young's. So, they can definitely special order it. Everyone will special order it as well. So
Yeah, I can definitely help you with that. And I I love all the stuff that I've ever had from you guys, and I definitely
well,
want
you're
to see
just
it do
saying
well.
that because I'm on the call with you.
Well, yeah. So come on, man. This is how I get you to come back in the future when this blows up. We have a million people. But yeah, I'll definitely help you out with that, Catherine. So to make sure that we can get you some of this fun stuff. Um, that's an interesting question. What do you think, Zan?
Does Adrum taste like anything new make I tasted in Scotland? Like you tasted new make rum in Scotland?
She probably tried New Make whiskey. Is my I think
Okay,
because I think I've talked to her about this before. It was New Make whiskey that she got to try.
Okay, so it's okay, Catherine. I know that. Okay, just unaged rum. Oh, okay, I mean unaged Jamaican pot still rum because we make our rum at Worthy Park in a double retort pot still. So a lot of the notes you get on our unaged rum, it's very grassy, it's very vegetal, not vegetable, vegetal, and it has that very again in the best way. There's almost like this dirt kind of very dirt driven taste, and it's actually very similar to. I feel like a lot of notes you get from unaged agricole. It's very similar. You get some of these kind of grassy notes to it, versus unaged rum that you get off a multi-column still, which is very alcohol forward. So I think with our unaged rum, it's very fruity. You get a lot of those ester notes on it. So I think it's very different, than unaged whiskey. And this is me not ever really having unaged whiskey, but I can imagine it's very different.
And Catherine, you're coming to my rum tasting on Friday. One of the rums in there is an unaged agricole, so it's not necessarily in the same vein as an unaged Jamaican, but
Yeah.
there are similarities, so to kind of give you an idea.
Yeah.
I think it's way better than unaged whiskey, so or new make
Yeah.
whiskey. So but I'm obviously
Which is probably why you don't really see any new make whiskey out there.
I mean, absolutely, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's certainly a reason for that. Um, let's see. Does anybody else have any questions?
I mean, I'm digging Catherine's questions. She could just keep firing questions away all night.
Catherine's pretty awesome. She actually has a notebook that's insane because she takes like diligent notes during all the tastings that we do in Sacramento, and then she's been coming to a lot of these happy hours as well. And eventually, like, she's gonna print the Catherine Spirits Encyclopedia, and it's gonna be amazing. So
Awesome. Well, hit me up if you need any more Jamaican rum info. I got a ton of info. Happy to share. Greg asking, can you review the product offering lineup?
I don't. We don't have anything from Worthy Park on Friday. We don't have anything in our portfolio from you.
That's true.
But we do have some projects in the future, so I'm not allowed to talk about it. But we have some cool stuff coming up that we might be working closer than ever before. Yeah. So yeah, we are going to start doing more rum tastings, and JVS doesn't have the biggest rum portfolio, and so I've actually been trying to figure out which one I wanted to do next month. So maybe, Zan, if you're interested, we could do a tasting with all of the Worthy Park stuff.
You have to trust my eye, man.
Cool. What is your Instagram?
I'll type it here right now. It's pretty hard to remember, so I'll type it. Oops, I spelled it wrong. There you go. That's the second one. ZANKONG. Yeah, but I guess just to kind of tell Greg, so we have our two main brands that we have. We have our rum bar line, which is typically our younger age rums, lower price point, but geared towards being very cocktail friendly, being very bartender friendly. Very big. These are the ones that have really taken off for us in the tiki world. And then we have our Worthy Park line, which is our older age expressions. Any unique kind of single cask or one-off bottlings that we're doing is under the Worthy Park single estate line. So those are kind of the two brands that we have in market right now. And Catherine's going to stalk me. All right.
Nice. Yeah. A lot of likes coming your way. A lot of likes. Okay, so what I'm going to do as kind of like our final thing is I'm going to share your event coming up because it's hilarious.
Oh, let's fly.
Here you go. So can you guys see that? Or do I need to take it? Can you guys see the screen? Or see my screen? Yeah. So that's a rum chat that you guys can get into. You know, I got to tell you, the first time that when you guys did the original poster, because it was like really good, like the Photoshop that was done on
Yeah.
it, because it was a little bit of a different angle. And I was like, oh man, I don't know how this makes me feel. Like it's kind of, is it racist? I don't know what it is. Like I don't know how to feel. But then once I, kind of saw the hilarity behind it, I was like, okay, cool. This is a lot of
Yeah.
fun. But you guys, this is a really hilarious talk, to say the least. Um, Sly is I've only got to hang out with him one time, but it is an experience I'll never forget. He's very, very entertaining, really, really good person as well. And so for us, that'll be noon on Sunday.
Yeah, noon
So
Sunday. So, after you get home from church and confess your sins, you can come for a little debauchery.
yeah, come make some new ones. Um,
Yeah.
well,
It is so ridiculously funny though, looking at it.
yeah, it's perfect. You guys nailed it. Hold on, we got some
Yeah.
chat. Okay, sweet.
And that's all Sly. That's Sly's Photoshop skills.
Well, if he's not cleaning the bar, he's got plenty of time to make Photoshop and all that fun stuff. So I know he's trying to stay busy over there.
Yeah.
But Dan, thank you so much for your time tonight, man. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it wasn't like every other tasting or talking that you've done so far.
No, dude, it was a lot of fun, man. It was. I appreciate you making it, kind of spicing it up, and Greg and Catherine, appreciate the interaction and the engagement. Tell you, man, sometimes I'll do a talk with like 75 people, and you'll get no questions, no interaction. And then, yeah, you do a smaller one, and I like it, man, because it's like you're actually like dealing with people, and I think it's the one thing I miss most about this what's going on now is like the talking directly with people, and
Yeah,
interacting with everybody.
absolutely. And honestly, that's a big part of the reason that I do this. And I was losing a little bit of steam a few weeks ago, and we had Ed Rudisell on, and
Yeah.
it was the first
Oh
time
yeah.
that Ed had ever done it. And that one, same situation. We had maybe like 7 people.
Yeah.
Like I said, like it doesn't make any sense on when people show up and when they don't.
No.
But we ended up having this really great conversation, and it was super fun. And it's just I like it because we're connecting all these different people, and it gives you that fix because we're so used to having those conversations all the
Yeah.
time, and the fact
Yeah.
that we're not getting them now sucks. So,
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
but yeah, so we'll share this too on YouTube, and we'll get it out there. But again, Bud, thank you so much for doing this. This was a lot of really great information,
I
and
appreciate it, man.
yeah, hopefully I'll see you at a rum event soon, actually in person.
Dude, I can't wait. And Greg, yeah, hopefully Sacramento, man. California's pretty much our biggest market in the state. So, was planning this year to spend quite some time there, but it's always 2021.
Yeah, 2021, absolutely. All right, Bud. Well, you get some rest, and I'll talk to you soon. We'll get
Yeah,
you.
dude.
We'll figure out that tasting. I think that'd actually be a lot of fun to do it with you.
Yeah, man.
So,
I'm more than happy to be a part of it.
sweet. We'll set it up. All right,
Yeah.
guys. Stay healthy, stay happy, and we'll be back next week with more fun guests and everything like that. But ultimately, thank you guys.
Yeah.
Cheers. Go
Cheers.
go drink some rum.
Yeah. Thank
Right,
you
bye,
guys.
guys.
Bye.